Adaku's mother, on sighting Kachi, warned her to keep away from her daughter. She told Kachi to stick to her kind, as her daughter was too holy to be associating with a common prostitute who had no regard for her own body. Kachi felt so terrible and decided to head back home. On her way, a group of women attacked her and tore her clothes. They accused her of having an affair with their husbands and threatened to deal with her. Once upon a time, there lived two best friends who lived completely different lives. Adaku was a very decent girl who loved to go to church. She had a very beautiful voice and even sang in the church choir. Kachi, on the other hand, was a very indecent girl who loved to dress in skimpy clothes. She was always seen around the men of the village, and the people labeled her a prostitute. All the women in the village, including Adaku's mother, despised her and warned their daughters to stay away from Kachi. They feared that Kachi would influence their daughters to behave like her and couldn't stand it happening. Despite this, Adaku remained friends with Kachi, and the villagers all wondered what Adaku saw in a girl who lived such an indecent life. Kachi's mother was so ashamed of her daughter and always wanted her to be like her friend Adaku, who was a church girl. One morning, Adaku came to visit her friend Kachi to invite her to a church program, but Kachi was extremely tired as she returned home late the previous night. Her mother was so furious that she began to scream at Kachi, asking why she had refused to emulate the footsteps of her friend Adaku, who never missed going to church. She even went as far as calling her a shameless prostitute who brought shame to her in the village. Despite this, Kachi still remained the same. She would spend hours in the village bar, chatting with men who were all reeking of alcohol. And on one night, Kachi sat in a corner talking to a married man when his wife approached them and threatened to kill her. Kachi ran away in fear, panting as she found her way home. She met her mother, who laughed to her face, saying that only the wicked runs when no one is chasing them. Kachi's mother warned her that if she ever got pregnant out of wedlock, she should never bother returning to their home, and Kachi retired to her room terrified as she thought of what could have happened if the man's wife had caught up with her. The next morning, Kachi rushed to Adaku's home to tell her all that happened the previous night, but Adaku was not home. Adaku's mother, on sighting Kachi, warned her to keep away from her daughter. She told Kachi to stick to her kind, as her daughter was too holy to be associating with a common prostitute who had no regard for her own body. Kachi felt so terrible and decided to head back home. On her way, a group of women attacked her and tore her clothes. They accused her of having an affair with their husbands and threatened to deal with her. Kachi cried out in fear, and a young man rushed to her aid. He protected her from the angry women and decided to escort Kachi home to ensure that she arrives home safely. His name was Obiozo, and he was the son of the popular village pastor. Obiozo was returning from a church program when he caught sight of Kachi being surrounded by the angry women. He escorted Kachi to her hut, and Kachi was so grateful to Obiozo for all that he did for her. She asked how she could repay him for his kindness, and Obiozo invited her for a church program that evening. Kachi, without any hesitation, agreed and promised to attend the church program. When evening came, Kachi wore a very long dress and headed to the church. She was so excited as she could not wait to see the shock on Adaku's face when she sees her in the church. However, she arrived at the church and noticed that Adaku was nowhere to be found. After the church service, Obiozo came to thank Kachi for honoring his visit, and Kachi thanked him for inviting her, saying that she enjoyed every bit of the service. Kachi left the church and headed home when she bumped into Adaku, who revealed that she was returning from an errand. Kachi and Adaku returned to Kachi's home, and Kachi narrated her encounter with the angry women who almost stripped her naked and how Obiozo, the pastor's son, saved her life. Adaku, on hearing this, was shocked as she advised Kachi to change her indecent lifestyle. Kachi looked at her and smiled, promising to change. Kachi, after a few hours of talking, complained of a serious headache and decided to catch some sleep. Adaku, on seeing how tired Kachi was, decided to leave her to rest. Kachi slept for several hours and woke up to notice that the headache had finally subsided. It was already dark, so Kachi decided to head out at that time of the night, wearing a very short dress. She arrived at the village bar and caught sight of someone who looked so much like her friend Adaku, dancing with a man in the bar. Kachi was shocked as she thought that her eyes were playing a trick on her. She approached them and realized truly that it was Adaku. "What are you doing here?" she asked as Adaku began to panic and pleaded with Kachi not to expose her secret. It was then that Kachi realized that her best friend Adaku was not the good girl that everyone had thought that she was. She hid under the guise of a good girl to frolic around the village with men, deceiving everybody who saw her as a saint. What the people did not know was that Adaku would leave her hut wearing a very long dress and head to the bush to change into skimpy clothes as she went after the married men in the village. Kachi was so disappointed as she dragged Adaku out of the bar, asking how she could do this. Adaku flared up and replied her with a question that she never saw coming. "What gives you the right to judge me, you renowned prostitute?" she asked as she walked out on Kachi, who looked at her in confusion. Kachi could not believe that her best friend could call her a prostitute to her face. She returned home and couldn't stop thinking about all that had happened. The next morning, Kachi decided to pay Adaku a visit in her home. When Adaku and her mother chased her away, warning her never to come to their hut again, Kachi returned home devastated as she began to cry. "If only they understand why I do what I do," she said as tears poured down her eyes. As Kachi was crying, she heard someone call her name outside. "Kachi," the voice called out repeatedly, and Kachi went out to check who it was. To her amazement, it was the pastor's son Obiozo, who had come to check up on her. He met her crying and asked what the problem was, and Kachi narrated all that happened with her best friend Adaku and how Adaku and her mother chased her away from their hut, calling her a prostitute, and Obiozo looked Kachi in her eyes and asked why she decided to live the kind of life that she was living. Kachi paused for a moment and said that people are quick to judge her without really knowing who she was. She went on to tell Obiozo the reason why she decided to venture into this kind of life. She revealed that she grew up watching her father carry several women in the village, especially prostitutes, and noticed how this hurt her mother so badly. So on one day, Kachi decided within herself to start dressing like a prostitute to gain the attention of the men of the village, especially the married men who leave their wives at home to go in search of prostitutes. She went to bars and places where she knew she would find such men and attracted them with her skimpy dressing. Unknowingly to these men, Kachi's indecent dressing was a disguise she used to attract men, not to sleep with them, but to lead them away from their promiscuous ways towards the path of righteousness. With each encounter, she shared wisdom and teachings from the scriptures that she had studied secretly at night. Her efforts were slowly transforming the lives of many men who began to abandon their nightly visits to the bar for church programs. Obiozo was so shocked as he could not believe what he was hearing. He asked Kachi why she never told anyone, and Kachi revealed to him that even if she tried, no one was going to believe her because they had already labeled her the village prostitute. After several hours of talking, Obiozo returned home and couldn't take his mind off Kachi's revelation. He said his prayers and went to bed and saw an old man who revealed to him that Kachi was going to be his wife. The old man told Obiozo that their paths crossed for a reason. Obiozo woke up from his sleep excited because he was already in love with Kachi. However, he wondered how he would break such a news to his father, the pastor, considering the fact that the entire village knew Kachi as the popular village prostitute, and Obiozo wondered how his father would take such a news. He deliberated for a while and after several hours decided to approach his father with the news. Shockingly, Obiozo's father revealed to him that he received the revelation as well and that he knew that Kachi was not a prostitute, and this was revealed to him a long time ago. Obiozo was so delighted as this made everything easy for him. He took a stroll to Kachi's hut and found her sitting outside her hut, her eyes swollen from crying. Obiozo sat next to Kachi, taking her hands in his as he asked her to marry him, and Kachi, without any hesitation, agreed as she had already fallen in love with him. In the weeks that followed, Obiozo, accompanied by his father and family, approached Kachi's mother to reveal their intentions to marry Kachi, and Kachi's mother was shocked to see the village pastor and his family in her home, asking for her daughter's hand in marriage. Even the entire village was now buzzing with gossip, as no one could believe that the pastor's son was planning on getting married to the popular village prostitute. The women of the village were so agitated as they could not wrap their heads around why a pastor would allow his son marry a woman who they believed was a prostitute. They all decided to march to the church the next morning to demand an answer from the pastor, threatening never to attend church programs again if the pastor's son goes ahead to marry the village prostitute. The men of the village, on hearing this, revealed to their wives that Akachi was not a prostitute, but a woman who turned their hearts away from promiscuity. They revealed how Akachi preached to them to change their ways and attributed their repentance and change in character to her. Their wives were so shocked as they could not believe that the woman who they so hated for being a prostitute was indeed an angel in disguise who led their husbands to God. The next morning, all the women gathered in front of Akachi's hut to thank her for what she did for them. They also apologized to her for how they treated her in the past, and Akachi's mother was so confused to hear all that her daughter Akachi had done. She felt so terrible for the times that she misjudged and compared her daughter with her best friend Adaku, who turned out to be the promiscuous one, pregnant for a married man in the village. Akachi's mother, as well as all the women in the village, apologized to Akachi for judging her wrongly and did all they could to make things up to her. That was how Akachi got married to Obiozo, who later found out that she was still a virgin. Adaku, on the other hand, became a topic of gossip as the villagers could not believe that she hid under the guise of a good girl to sleep with married men. Her friend Akachi was there to comfort her as she understood what Adaku was going through. Unable to stand the judging eyes of the villagers, Adaku moved out of the village one night with her mother, and no one heard from them ever again. This broke Akachi's heart as she used her position as the pastor's son's wife to educate the villagers to be more forgiving towards each other. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should not be quick to judge someone based on how they look or dress, because oftentimes things are not as it seems. I hope you enjoyed the story. Like, subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.